So I have a presentation that I want to show you guys. Actually, my friend Adi did the presentation. We got on a Zoom call and recorded it. And so I'm going to put that presentation in the video here. This is just the introduction. So my friend Adi is giving a presentation on what he calls EVECs, which stands for Eco Village Education Centers. And he's going to break down what that means, what the benefits are of his EVEC model, and how you can create something like that for yourself. I think it's going to be very interesting for a lot of you here on this channel. I know there's been a lot of interest expressed over the years of people wanting to create things like this, and so my friend Adi has a lot of background and knowledge on how to do this, and he has really good intentions behind it, what he's trying to create. So I wanted to present his presentation here on the channel, and that's what I'm going to put right at the end of this intro here. So I welcome you to watch it, and at the end, if you want to get in touch with him, he's got his contact details. So I hope you guys find it interesting, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, and I'll go ahead and mute myself.
Okay.
I'll just be here in the background, I suppose, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. Yeah, you're who I'm speaking to. You're my audience.
Okay.
Okay. Let me get to. Um, Here we go. Okay. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to share about Eco Village Educational Centers. My name is Adi Govinda Das. Here's a brief overview of what we'll be discussing today. I'll give you a brief introduction to myself. We'll do a brief assessment of the current scope of our problems in society and how we might start to put together an enlightened society through the introduction of eco-village educational centers in America and throughout the world. Natural building examples we'll go over. I'll also share some permaculture concepts, which is sustainable agriculture, and some programming concepts that often accompany the eco-village educational centers, or EVECs. We'll like to conclude with suggestion for collective consciousness transformation, creating social change through self-realization. Once again, I'm Adi Govinda Das. I have been going on a journey of the wounded healer, which is a poetic way of saying that I am a aspiring healer, and I've come through my own processes of healing, experiencing my own diseases. And this is called the journey of a wounded healer in some circles, whereby the person finds some strength to heal themselves and then has the heart of compassion to share that healing with others. And so out of that mood of helping others, I pursued some degrees in natural health care. My bachelor's degree is in alternative medicine. I'm a master herbalist. My master's degree is in Ayurveda. Ayurveda is the ancient medical system from India, one of the oldest medical systems in the world. And currently, I'm in my doctorate program for public health. I'm set to graduate in that program sometime next fall. I have a natural building certification in Cobb. I've attended several workshops on that natural building technique, which we'll discuss in this PowerPoint. We also have some design training in permaculture design, which once again is that sustainable method of agricultural designing. But the core of this presentation was really born out of my studies of Vedic culture. In Ayurveda, in my bachelor's degree, I started learning about Varnashram Dharma and Vedic culture and learned about the influence of eco-villages in human society and how they've been fundamental in creating the longest living civilization in the world, the Vedic culture. But let's put our finger on the pulse of some of the problems we're experiencing And from the perspective where I am in Maine, there's a 10% poverty rate. It's a 30% ALICE rate. ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. So this is a bracket of people who are actively working. They're responsible people, but they are on the brink of poverty. And many of these people in ALICE, if they miss one or two paychecks, they could be homeless, or they could have severe setbacks in their financial situation. 2,695 people were reported homeless in 2024, point in time count here in Maine. This point in time count is notoriously inaccurate. This number is expected to be 3 or 5 times more, for some logistical reasons that this number is always underreported. But there are at least 2,695 people who were found to be homeless on the day they decided to take the point in time count. 1 in 8 people in Maine experienced food insecurity in 2022, which is about 180,000 people. And 5.5% of people in Maine do not have a high school diploma, whereas 35% of people in Maine have a bachelor's degree or higher. And this post-secondary education stat actually comes in about 3% lower than the national average. So here are some overviews of some general areas of problematic social situations. Here's another area, which is in our disease rates here in Maine. You'll see on this section of Maine with the dark purple that this represents that most people in this area have 4 or 5 chronic comorbidities. Excuse me. They have 4 or 5 chronic diseases happening simultaneously. You'll also notice that this takes up about half the state. And we'll discuss this phenomenon in a little bit. But we can see that many of our people in Maine are experiencing multiple diseases simultaneously. Another statistic worth noting is that 23% of Maine's population is 65 years or older, and that is the highest rate in the nation. So another at-risk population is our elderly and people who are at risk for poverty or homelessness and who are at risk for chronic diseases, and people who we need to consider as we move forward creating innovative solutions for our social problems. According to the Maine CHNA data, 50% of Maine is considered rural, and the rural area in Maine had the worst health outcomes. And this is about 24% of the population. Social isolation, for example, in rural areas, can be an influencing factor, according to the CDC, to increasing the risk of diabetes, heart disease, stroke, depression, anxiety, and many other chronic health diseases. And so when we think of a rural area, rural Maine, 50% of the state is at increased risk for these diseases. And one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is because ecovillages are primarily best situated in rural areas, and they can provide essential services for people in those areas to learn about healthcare, natural healthcare, natural lifestyles, healthy lifestyles, and so on. So there's a brief overview of the scope of our state's problem, and it is gargantuan. It involves economic, political, ecological, ideological, societal, and global influences. And my proposition is that the scope of a solution should always be larger than the scope of the problem. And this begs the question, what kind of solution has a larger scope than today's current problems? And my proposition is also that ecovillages actually are a broad scope solution, which encompass all these different areas, human society, and provide very practical solutions to these problems. Close to the cause comes the cure. So we have to identify the causes of our problems in society in order to understand how to really address them at the root. This is a principle in natural health care, and it's relevant also in healthcare of our society. One nice quote, or brutally honest quote, you can say, Dr. Norman Ernest Borlaug was quoted saying, "You can't build a peaceful world on empty stomachs and human misery." And this is talking about the phenomena that Maslow also spoke to, and Ayurveda also speaks to. That generally speaking, people need to meet their physiological needs first, their basic needs, their survival needs, in order to have opportunities to explore different areas of human experience. Moving into the second stage that you see on this slide here, health, employment, family, and upward, accumulating in self-actualization. And so many wisdom traditions and even many modern psychologists affirm that in order to have a self-actualized society, or a society full of fully functional people who have achieved their full potential and are completely satisfied in life, the beginning of that is to be able to provide the basic survival needs. And so if we are failing to provide the basic survival needs for our people, then it can't be very surprising to us that we won't have very happy people, very self-actualized people, because their attention is based on how they can survive. And so what eco-villages provide is an opportunity to meet those basic needs and create a format for people to transcend to higher stages of human development and consider things like who they are and what their purpose is in life. Self-realization is the highest goal of consciousness development, according to wisdom traditions throughout the world and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Our society should be designed as a supportive path for this achievement for all beings. And this is the foundation of Varnashram Dharma, the Vedic culture, that society is engineered and organized in such a way that all people have a great opportunity to achieve their full potential. Basic needs of society must be provided for the people. And this is the beginning of a prosperous society. It's not the end, but it's a nice beginning to be able to provide people with basic necessities. But there's a crack in the foundation of the way we provide these necessities. And so a new foundation must be more consciously poured. We're to build an enlightened culture. Here's our new service delivery model. Here's the foundation that I'm speaking to. Eco-villages as educational centers for simple living and high thinking. Eco-village educational centers are a community design that's centered around sustainable living practices, education, and skill building. Eco-villages often build sustainable buildings and make them available for people to stay in while they live, learn, and work there. The EVECs also coordinate educational events which teach people about sustainable living practices. So even if people are not currently residing there, they provide an access point for people to gain essential education on sustainable living. Here's some examples of some cob buildings. We have a nice, very beautiful design cob building and a very simple building here. A cob is a mixture of clay, sand, straw, and water. And the aggregate of those ingredients can dry to form almost like a concrete. The average house cost for this material is somewhere between 5,000 and 30,000, depending on how grand of a design you have or how simple of a design. And this is very cost-effective method of building homes. The clay and sand and water They're usually readily available anywhere on the earth, which makes earthen building a primary building technique for the people of this world. And you'll note that because of this easy accessibility to resources, that the costs are very, very low. Sometimes 1/10 or 1/20th of the cost of a modern home. And this is why natural buildings can be a viable solution to address poverty and homelessness, and why educating on this subject is very important for people to learn how to build their own homes and to help others build their homes. It's another example of natural building, a tiny home made out of wood, cost-effective dwelling, a price range between 6,000 to 25,000. They can get even bigger than that, or even more expensive than that. But these are a nice range, a modest living arrangement that's often found in eco-villages throughout the country and throughout the world. Another building material is stone, which I personally find very beautiful. And stone is also a material that's found readily in most landscapes. And the costs for constructing with this material are very affordable. 8,000 to 40,000 and upward, depending on the scheme and the design you have. Another principle applied in eco-villages, besides natural building techniques, is permaculture. And permaculture is a design science that mimics natural systems, and it works with natural laws to create a food system that can outproduce modern agriculture by 10 times. Because it's not gardening in straight rows, and it's not monocropping or single plant species in straight lines. It creates diversity in an ecosystem that balances itself, diminishes the risk of pests, diminishes the risk of diseases, and maximize the yields. So one technique to help feed people is to understand permacultural principles. And these are often taught at eco-villages. Here's another nice design of a permaculture design. They're based on things like creating a balanced ecosystem for food production, minimal input for maximum output, and growing food, not lawns. You find there's a common saying in permaculture: grow food, not lawns. We have hungry people, and yet we're watering lawns. The irony of that can't escape us for very long. We should be rooting up our lawns and producing food in our communities to help people who are impoverished, who have access to food problems, and so forth. Here's an example of some programs that happen in eco-villages, natural building programming. You see a group of people here building a oven, cob oven. See a group of people over here working on a nice cob building. And these workshops help people learn how to build with the material, help the community put up a building that then the community can use, and can also serve as a fundraising opportunity for the sustainability of eco-villages. Some examples of programming that often accompany EVECs. Work exchange programs, for example, allow people to stay at the eco-village in order for their service there at the eco-village. They are given residency, food, and sometimes even a stipend. This kind of work exchange allows the eco-village to produce foods that they could then take to market, or they can store to feed the people who reside at the eco-village. And this process strengthens local food systems and makes communities more resilient. The stipend that's sometimes given to the visitors of eco-villages allows people who are in financial difficulty an opportunity to save money, learn valuable skills, and get themselves on their feet for a more sustainable livelihood. These eco-villages are a conducive model for people looking for transitional housing. Sometimes there are short-term housing arrangements, like I mentioned, for work exchange, but there may also be mid to long-term work exchange arrangements where people could potentially stay there indefinitely if they are finding themselves fulfilled there and the community is in agreement. These programs attract a wide variety of people from different backgrounds, and therefore eco-villages help to eliminate stigmas and social isolation that often is accompanying other low-income housing facilities. The inclusive and communal atmosphere of EVCs provide positive social interactions for all the people involved. So everyone benefits from these kind of exchanges. One of the other more subtle elements of eco-villages are that they provide a platform for people to understand spiritual activities and start to practice spiritual life. And so, in essence, what I'm proposing is a paradigm shift, a collective consciousness transformation for our people that puts a greater emphasis on spiritual development as a part of the spectrum of healing our sick society. Albert Einstein was quoted saying, "You can't solve a problem with the consciousness that it took to create that same problem." Wayne Dyer is quoted saying, "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." And one of my spiritual teachers, Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, he's quoted saying, "Compassion for the dress of a drowning man is senseless. A man fallen in the ocean of nescience cannot be saved simply by rescuing his outward dress, the gross material body." These quotes are important to consider as we think about the importance of eco-villages and what they offer. Spiritual life. They can offer an opportunity for people to change the way they view the world, change the way they look at their life, the way they view themselves, and show true compassion for this individual. Most programming in our society is based on rescuing their physical body, giving them food, giving them water, giving them low-income housing. But what's very neglected in our society is to actually help the person who's dwelling inside the body. So this quote by Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami, very pertinent here. If the person is drowning and you save their shirt, not much help. The person is drowning. The shirt is not as important. Similarly, the person is experiencing sadness, discomfort, suffering in this world. Helping their physical body is only one part, one very external, superficial part of how we can really help them. And eco-villages offer a holistic approach towards helping people and diminishing suffering on this planet. They offer physical well-being by providing basic needs for humanity, shelter, food, water, so forth. They offer creative well-being. EVECs often offer a chance to people to practice art. And you saw in the cob designing, it can be very artistic. People get an opportunity to practice creative expression. Eco-villages also offer an opportunity for people to get experience in mental well-being, mental health. The environment is very peaceful. There's many positive people who attend the programming. And if the undercurrent is developing spiritual life, then naturally the mind becomes very serene. This also leads to emotional stability, emotional well-being. People living at eco-villages have a social context that is supporting and nurturing. And this creates emotional health, emotional well-being. Spiritual well-being is also provided or offered at eco-villages in a variety of ways. An opportunity to reflect, to study, to learn from others, and to practice spiritual activities. When your basic needs are met in food, water, shelter, then you have an opportunity, a greater opportunity to consider the meaning of life and just where you fit into this grand scheme of life. Here's some evidence of when people practice spiritual activities together. There's been a lot of evidence how it can affect society in positive ways by lowering violent crime rates, homicides, drug-related deaths, and so on. One institute in Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, showed clear evidence that human thought and emotion can produce measurable influences on physical reality. This is another subtle benefit that EcoVillage can offer the world. By changing human consciousness and providing an opportunity for personal transformation, that transformation can send ripple effects throughout all the world. And here's a list of evidence, which I'll be happy to provide anybody is interested, that substantiates this phenomena of a non-local effect of consciousness, and how when a group of people are sincere about developing spiritual life, it can change the world, even if the rest of the world doesn't know they're doing it. Including the spiritual aspect of human life and social service delivery is an essential part, something that's been neglected in public health delivery and social services for far too long. We need to consider a holistic approach towards mending the societal problems we have. And an EcoVillage provides this in a very fundamental, practical way. Allowing people an opportunity to discover, who am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? And to explore, through the use of various wisdom traditions, just how we can discover who we are. Some examples of logical exercises proving this phenomena, that subtle things come first. First, a person's transformation inside themselves, something that's unseen, something that no one can put their finger on. These subtle inner transformations occur first, and then a person's external life reflects that. So similarly, if our culture and our society can have a transformation of consciousness, each one of us achieving a sense of personal transformation, then the positive changes in society will happen as a secondary consequence of that enlightenment. So, a synthesis, in summary here, the social problems we face are not thoroughly addressed by the social programs we're using. Our neighbors are not speaking to each other, and this makes our communities fragmented, isolated, and precariously situated. Some emergent science over the last 50 years reveals powerful potential of collective consciousness transformation, where you can all take spiritual life very seriously. We can help diminish the suffering on this planet very naturally. And these wisdom traditions that echo or are the source of this revelation have all called for the use of eco-villages as the basic unit for human society, because they're the most supportive model for self-realization. EVECs address multiple societal problems simultaneously, as I've reviewed: food insecurity, homelessness, education disparities, preventative health care, poverty, social pathology. Eco-villages act as a medium for personal development and facilitate long-lasting transformation in people's lives. I'm a primary example of this. I've resided at several eco-villages, and one I lived for 2 years or so. And living there afforded me an opportunity to really understand who I am, what my skills are, and how to use them to live a sustainable life. So my request for everybody viewing this is please create eco-villages based on sustainable living, natural health care, and consciousness transformation. Create them everywhere, wherever you are. Organize, create workshops. Start to build eco-villages that are based on principles of natural law. And we should create Sustainable Living Council so we can provide innovative solutions for our social problems of today. And so I'm inviting everybody to collaborate with me to any degree they feel inspired to do. Alternatively, you can donate to my nonprofit. You can find a link, the donate button at my website, PanaceaHolisticHealth.org. And I'd like to thank you for your time very much.